Hey everybody, it's Glenn back in this video with the Star Wars Black Series, The Force Awakens, REY and BB-8. In fact, the packaging defines this incarnation of REY with Jakku in brackets behind her name, so that suggests perhaps we'll get a second REY in a different costume maybe? The bio from the packaging back reads, REY is a resilient survivor, a scavenger toughened by a lifetime of dealing with the cutthroats of the harsh desert world of Jakku. BB-8 is the spherical, loyal astromech droid of the Resistance pilot Poe Dameron. This REY and BB-8 were actually released a number of months ago, and I have over the weeks in anticipation of The Force Awakens picked up a number of the action figures. Yet I've waited until now to crack them open and review them as I wanted to see The Force Awakens first. Not that these reviews will be airing spoilers for anybody who has yet to see that movie, it's just the seeing the movie that potentially allows building an emotional connection to its characters and therefore also the action figures of those characters. And I'm glad I waited as I did, as I could have reviewed this piece of plastic months ago knowing next to nothing about it, yet now I get to share with you a review of my favourite character from The Force Awakens. I found Daisy Ridley's performance as REY completely compelling, and it was a pleasure to see this new episode unfold through her eyes. But I won't be blind to the figure's shortcomings, as it does have some. So while the sculpt does nicely realise the various folds and textures of her costume, however that sculpt isn't as complemented by the paint deco as I'd like it to be, as the paint applications here are very simple and as such broad and flat looking. It's really a shame, as the application of a darker wash or dry brushing in a lighter shade would really accentuate the sculpt, and as such create a much better sense of a worn-in costume of a scavenger living in a harsh environment. And then when I ask for more paint application, we get some in the face, but not especially in a good way with those rosy cheeks. That rosiness combined with the overall paleness of her skin gives her a bit of a porcelain doll look. And frankly, it's giving me flashbacks of being a kid and my mother going through this phase of aspiring to be middle class by displaying porcelain dolls decked out in period dress. I'm sure you know the ones I mean. Blank, lifeless faces staring back at me, scaring me more than Chucky and Annabelle together combined. Then in the sculpt, that hair that's hanging in front of her ears down her face is lacking some subtlety and beginning to look less like hair and more like tendrils growing out of her face. But then I love the sculpt of the do in the back. The big knots of hair kind of remind me of Bjork, remember her? However, in light of all the shortcomings I mentioned, having now seen the movie and enjoyed this character, I'm now a lot more willing to overlook them than I was, say, a couple of months back when I first saw her on pegs and was like, what the? For a nice bonus though, she does come with BB-8, who seem to be a much more instant hit of the Force Awakens merchandise, so much so in fact that I remember seeing listings on eBay from sellers who had plucked little BB-8 from the packaging and were then trying to sell REY on her own. Now with the audience I saw the movie with, the biggest chuckle of the night was provided by BB-8 here. If you've seen the movie, perhaps you'll know the bit I mean. And the cute little droid is rendered really nicely here with all the detail there, that's all inset into the surface. However, the paint application is really quite uneven, with the head being subject to a much dirtier wash than the round body part, which thus appears much brighter in comparison. He's weighted inside, so when you give him a bit of a knock, weebles wobble but they don't fall down. Well, he doesn't fall down, does end up looking a bit drunk though. Yet his head is posable, so it rotates around and is also able to move forward and backwards and pivot around. Yet how you pose his head does affect the weighting inside, so it makes it a bit tricky with posing the head and maintaining an upright vanilla position. Breaking out the tape measure, and REY stands about 5.5 inches tall, whereas BB-8 stands about 2.5 inches tall, which seems like a screen accurate size distinction between the two. The Disney Store exclusive Elite series also has this pairing, but their BB-8 seems scaled much larger. For an accessory, REY does come with her staff. The deco on it is pretty simple, with just some paint applied to the strap and these parts here. Now we will talk about articulation in a moment, as I have been quite critical with with the elbow posability of the Black Series as for characters that brandish blasters and lightsabers, the elbow articulation just seems lacking, but here Rey is able to do a nice naturalistic double-handed pose with the staff. However, when it comes to placing the staff over her shoulder as we see her do in the movie, naturalistic it ain't. I've tried it both ways around now, and it just seems that the strap part is made from a plastic that's just too dense to allow it to flex over the shoulder. As promised, now looking at articulation, and her head rotates side to side, she's able to look down quite a fair amount, and she looks up, albeit inhibited by that bunch of hair. At the shoulder, her arm rotates, and this also hinges up, actually more than much of the Black Series. And at the elbow there's rotation, and this hinges to slightly less than a right angle to her upper arm. Then at the wrist there is rotation, and then her hands are hinged moving down and also up. At the waist she has rotation, plus here she's able to move forward this much and then move very slightly back. Now her costume part here is of a plastic with some flex to it, so it doesn't inhibit the hip articulation. Really, the hip articulation seems more inhibited by the white skirt underneath there. And then the legs move forward and slightly back. There's upper leg rotation. Then at the knee there's rotation, plus this is also hinged, moving backwards and forwards again. At the ankle it's hinged, plus it has that crazy ankle rocker pivot that I love. Yet with the somewhat limited hip articulation, she's not able to take full advantage of that ankle pivot, with this being her widest stance possible, still with both feet flat on the floor. So when it comes to giving Rey a yay or a nay, I think had I taken a look at her a few months back, it would have been a nay. However, right here, right now, swept along as I am by a wave of goodwill for having an actual good Star Wars movie back in our lives, I give her a yay. But as far as you guys are concerned, let me know in the comments below, is Rey a yay or a nay? And stay tuned as I tuck into much more The Force Awakens, and if you haven't been counting down to Christmas with me in a Lego Star Wars styly, then click this video for the playlist to catch up. We're now just 1 week away from the big day. Ho ho ho.